For a while, I've been pumping out these Midjourney style videos, but one thing that's really cool is that people often chime in and share styles with me in the comments. So today I'm going to be sharing those styles, those user-submitted styles that I think look pretty awesome. We're going to test some of these out. Some work really well, some don't work quite as well, but I want to thank everyone for their suggestions, but today we're going to get into it by looking at some comments and checking out some of these styles. Now, I'm not going to read out usernames because some of them are pretty hard to pronounce, but the first comment here, you can see the username at the top. You and your videos are amazing. I'm learning a lot. Congratulations. I tried with Futurama, South Park, Funko Pop, and Lego. So I've tried Funko Pop and Lego. We're going to move on and try Futurama and South Park. The Futurama cartoon style. Woman's face, as you can see, it doesn't really look like Futurama, but it has made it futuristic. So it does have an impact, but not always the one we're after. However, the futuristic car, I think, actually has added a little bit more of a Futurama style to it. Modern Family Home has a very close Futurama style to it, just not with the outlines. And Batman, it's got the outlines, more of a cartoon style than a Futurama style, but with a little bit more of a play, I'm pretty sure we can make this work. So maybe I'll come back and see if I can get something that nails down that Futurama style a little bit better. Moving on to South Park style. This one was really hit and miss. I've tried to focus on the ones that work really well, but sometimes it just didn't work quite as well. For instance, the woman's face doesn't really look like South Park, but it's given her Kenny's orange hood, which I thought was pretty cool. So it does tend to bring in elements, if not the style itself. Batman, now a few of these didn't turn out in the South Park style, but I really like what they've done here. Very South Park looking picture of Batman, and just really spot on. The Incredible Hulk, he's not green, he's wearing a green shirt, but this is really cool. It looks like South Park artwork as opposed to like a TV screen cap. Barbie, it's still trying to keep like an action figure, but shaped into more of a South Park style character. I thought this was a really interesting result. And Pikachu, it's just added the hood. Doesn't look too South Park style except for maybe the body. But overall, it's still pretty interesting, and I'm definitely going to keep playing with some of these to see what I can get. The next comment is, this is a really nice and cool series you have here. I have a suggestion, Neo Ink Impressionism. And to cut it short, he's saying this is a very artistic and neat style, Japanese ink style with a high level of splatter. So let's check it out. Neo Ink Impressionism. Woman's face looks much like the last image, so very cool effect overall. Now Pikachu, this is another great example of it. We've got a picture of Pikachu with ink everywhere, much like it was described in the comment. Batman, same again, that ink splat that goes all over the place, really painted style. I really like the impact it has. Reminds me a little bit of Ink Alcohol Dreams, but not quite the same color-wise. Futuristic car. Now this I thought was really cool. It doesn't have quite the same effect, but still has that impact, which I think turned out really well. Next comment, I really love the Star Wars style prompt and thought to suggest using Ralph McQuarrie as a prompt. So Ralph McQuarrie was the concept artist behind the original Star Wars. So you can see his style pretty present here. Obviously very futuristic being Star Wars, but also a really sort of sunlit style, kind of like that Tatooine style with deep shadows. And with Barbie, it's actually just popped her into a Star Wars scene. But you'll notice when we move on, the Incredible Hulk doesn't look too Star Warsy, but that really high sort of light and shadow, that sunlight style, this is more his art style in regards to shading, and I think it has turned out pretty cool. Pikachu has a lightsaber. I like the way it's kind of had that Star Wars mix to it, so it's actually done a pretty good job with that also. Futuristic car. This really looks like a car you would see in Star Wars. Very reminiscent of that Ralph McQuarrie style. And even the background has a little bit of a Tatooine sort of feel to it. And the Modern Family Home really looks like a Star Wars home. I imagine that if you are doing well and you're an upper middle class person living in the Star Wars galaxy, this is probably what your home looks like. Now, in response to Faded Photo, we have a comment saying, instead of Faded Photo, I do Worn Photo. Nice tips though. Well, thank you very much. We have Worn Photo has got some very similar results, but still very cool. There's a little bit of a difference, and I think it's worth mentioning. So a woman's face, you can see it's an old worn photo. It's just got a picture of a woman's face, a lot of wear and tear, a bit of a crinkle in the paper if you look at the upper right hand corner, and almost like a bit of water damage on the left. Pikachu hasn't done as much, but it does look like a photo. A little bit like just someone wearing a downtown on the street, just like an old photo but without all the wear and tear. The Incredible Hulk, it's actually done something with the skin and the clothing. I think it's tried to translate it into what he's wearing, but also applied that kind of photo style to it. So a pretty interesting take on that. And the family photo, or the family modern home, I should say, looks like an old photo of family home. It's a little bit faded, Looks kind of fake and staged. If you look at the grass, it doesn't actually look like grass. It looks like fake grass, but an old 70s style home, which I thought was interesting. Samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji has that worn photo look in the sense that the color's been sucked out of it. Not really worn texturized or anything like that, but just interesting overall the way it's kind of sucked the color out of that photo. The next comment, I like this series, very much appreciated. I was playing around with some different printing techniques like collotype print, blueprint, cross-processing print, and melanotype print, I believe it's pronounced, and halftone print. Maybe inspiration for your next video. This comment is what gave me the idea for the video in the first place, so we're going to check out some of these styles. However, I have done blueprint in the past, so we'll omit that before we get into it. Collotype print is kind of like a gelatin-based photographic printing process used in sort of in the 1800s, so it has that old feel to it. A woman's face does look like an old photo, very sort of like a lot of problems mixed up within it, but still a pretty cool look overall. Batman, very old looking photo, almost looks like the background has that 1800s feel to it, but a bit of destruction around him, which I thought was a cool addition. Barbie, very old-fashioned looking print, but also the blue and the pink, a little bit different than what I expected, not really true to the style, but it still has an interesting effect. Pikachu does look like an old 1800s style print with the brown, and it's only like that two color, like brown yellow with the red added to the cheeks. I think it has followed that style pretty well. Modern family home. Now this looks like an old drawing more than an old print, but a little bit of a photographic feel to it, but overall I think pretty interesting. Cross-processing type print. It's kind of like mixing two printing processes together with like kind of like a different process. More than my understanding, but that's my basic understanding of it, but you can see the impact it's had on this image. Moving on to the woman's face, you can see it's got a little bit of an overlay and almost like a little bit of a mix, almost like there's another image laid over the top of it unintentionally, but a cool effect that has that kind of unintended look to the film processing. Modern family home, it kind of just looks like an old photo, a bit faded, but it's stuck to having like a very strong warm and a very strong cool, so like that orange and the blue, almost like it wants to stick to two main colors within the image. And the same you can see with the samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji. Very blue image with some reds or sort of burnt orange mixed in there. Not a lot of purples, greens, or anything like that. Just those two colors very present in some of these photos. And again with Pikachu. Although Pikachu is very yellow, so it's added a bit more yellow and a little less blue. Almost like a little bit of a duotone type effect. Batman doesn't look like a photo at all, but it does have that effect with the color. So I do think this tends to affect the color a fair bit, and depending on what it has to clash with in the prompt will sort of determine, I guess, how much of the sort of style will be applied to it. The melanotype print is kind of like a print, really old process where a print is produced onto like a piece of metal. And you can kind of see it with the color here and with Batman, the way that it just looks like a very sepia, black and white image, but that old-fashioned dress style. He's got no eyes for some reason, but kind of gives it like a really vintage style photo look. And you check out the woman's face and it has got that worn look to it as well, old-fashioned, with a little bit of a reflection in the dark areas. We can see it on the right-hand side there. It does have a very nifty kind of like very old, very corroded image effect. But with Barbie, it's completely thrown away that effect altogether, but just gone for an old-fashioned style, which you can see with the hair and even like the wallpaper. So not always going straight for the effect, but applying elements of the age to the image. Samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji is more of an illustration, but still has that same color and old-fashioned kind of look to it. And the futuristic car, again, a little bit of the sepia has been applied to it, but more that really old-fashioned style of design, kind of like retro-futurism, if you will. Something that I like the impact. The fact that it's not always the same is actually kind of interesting to me, and I think that you can get some interesting results when experimenting with this kind of stuff. Halftone print. If you've ever been involved in printing, you'll know that every image is comprised of tiny dots. That's why they have such things like DPI, dots per inch. And if you zoom in, you get these little dots, but people use it as an effect. So these dots here around the woman's face kind of showcase that. When you move on to Barbie as a halftone print, it has got her there, but with dots around her. But this is still a bit hit and miss. The Incredible Hulk, it doesn't have the dots in that really obvious effect, but it has added a bit of a dottiness to some of the shading if you were to look really close. So it's not an identical effect across the board, and this was perhaps the dottiest version of Hulk that came out, but you can still get some interesting results with it, depending on how it sort of pumps out or what image it basically works with. And Batman, you can see we've got some dots around him. It's added in there. They don't really look like halftone dots, but more interesting is the subtle effect around the mouth. You can see some dots around the mouth, little dot effects, like a little sort of like rectangle area full of dots here and there on his mask, on his shoulder. So it has added a sort of subtle dot effect to that image. Modern Family Home, it doesn't have any dots, but it does look like a print, if that makes sense. So not really a halftone effect, but kind of like what you would get if you printed something out. Kind of look like an old print. The futuristic car, there's a few dots around it, a few dots texturized into the image, and it's kind of more stylized, that image, without really getting too harsh on the halftone dots, but they're in there. So it's interesting to see how far it will go with some images and not with others. This AI art enthusiast has said slot machine art, if anything, should raise human-created art to the level of prestige, human-crafted luxury art that comes with a ludicrous price tag. Midjourney is great for kids if they want to mature beyond Star Wars and breasts. They might one day create captivating works of art. So this is, I'm a little bit offended that I haven't thought of slot machine art before. I think that's a really great idea. So we've got slot machine art here, which I think this is just the image, straight up slot machine art. Add the woman's face to it, and it's like she's embedded in the slot machine. And this has probably been one of the most impactful phrases on this video. I hope you're enjoying the sarcasm. Now Barbie, it's popping out of the slot machine. I really like what it's done with that, and you do get an interesting effect. It's not always the same as this. Pikachu, again, popping out of the slot machine. And a lot of these images actually had people just sitting at slot machines, which was interesting. But I really prefer to focus on the images it's impacted the most. So moving on to the samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji. This is almost like what you'd see on the screen. There's some slots either side of him, but he's still composed standing in front of Mount Fuji. I thought it was pretty interesting. And this is an example of what I mean before. Futuristic car has placed a nice car in front of a bunch of slot machines, but still a really awesome looking image. And Susan Miller, in the style of stained glass, is her suggestion. I have done stained glass before, but not in that exact phrase, but I thought I'd try it out. And some pretty decent results. As you can see, this is the kind of impact, this is what stained glass looks like. Apply it to a woman's face and you'd get a very interesting look. The way it's pieced those colors together, I think looks amazing. The Incredible Hulk, the way it interprets this into stained glass is really quite interesting. I'm actually really impressed with how Midjourney handles stained glass overall. The futuristic car, again, very nice effect. Stained glass in the background, almost like it's a stained glass window, but in a stained glass window image, if you know what I mean. Mickey Mouse, I really like the old-fashioned eyes and the way it's sort of laid this one out. It looks like a legitimate glass window, stained glass window. And the Modern Family Home, I thought was interesting because the home obviously has stained glass windows, but the image itself is still in a style of stained glass, but not surrounded. It's kind of like a cut-out piece of stained glass. It's like a hybrid mix of all these different elements and layers of stained glass. So this one I thought was really interesting. This was the only one of the grid that turned out like that, but still a good result. Next comment. Also, I'm not too sure if you've tried it already, but photographic mosaic style is another good one where hundreds of smaller images make up the main image. Now, what I did try, I didn't quite get that same result, but I got an interesting result either way because it's like a photo, but there's lots of mosaic tiles within it. So it has turned out different than I expected, but still really cool. Now, the woman's face, same as the image before. It's like a woman's face made up of a bunch of tiles, like a mosaic. Terminator, same again, just a nice photograph, but made up of those tiles and a very interesting result. And this could be very handy for certain styles of art. However, with the futuristic car, the car is actually just a photo of the car surrounded by sort of mosaic tiles. And this effect was very interesting as an image overall. Mickey Mouse has done something a little bit different again, where it's mosaic different objects and pieces into the image. In the Modern Family Home, if you take a look, at first glance, it doesn't look like anything too interesting. However, you look at the entranceway, you look at the windows, and you look at the walls, and everything is like some form of mosaic mixed into the image, which I think is done another way that this particular Modern Family Home phrase just has a bit of fun with the style you throw at it by mixing it into the build of the house instead of the image. Finally, this is not a suggestion, but Hulk looks like those old pinball screens. And I thought old pinball screens is actually not a bad idea. So you just get this pinball image when you just put it in by itself, but add the woman's face, and there's a woman's face and a pinball layout printed over the top, like you're looking directly down on a printed pinball screen, and it's done a pretty interesting job, especially when you add the Terminator to it. It's got like a pinball machine with a giant Terminator head hovering over the top, which I think turned out pretty interesting. This I don't get, but I had to include it. The futuristic car looks like you've actually taken the point of view of the car and he's driving through the city. You could possibly even look at the buildings and think that maybe they're like the little pins inside the pinball machine, but I don't think so. It's just done a different job, and every single image in the grid turned out as a point of view shot, which never happens with this. But it is interesting the way it's handled that. And the Incredible Hulk. This looks like a really bright, eye-grabbing pinball machine that you would have played as a kid. I like the way it's handled it and sort of embedded that crazy Hulk face into the design. And a samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji. He is just a guy standing in front of a bunch of pinball machines. However, there's Mount Fuji painted on the wall behind them. This was surprising because this samurai standing in front of Mount Fuji is probably one of the least impacted images in the style videos, which is why I include it. Because if it looks exactly the same, you get an idea that it's not a strong style. But very interesting impact overall. So those are the user-submitted styles. A massive thank you to everyone who submitted to make this video possible. I hope you really enjoyed them, and if you have any, please pop them in the comments below, because if I get more of these, I will continue to make these videos and have a bit of fun. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. Otherwise, I hope you're having a great day, and we'll see you again next time.